rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective, and I am your host, Rick. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is here, the defining moment, because one of the candidates has been hiding. The defining moment has finally arrived. It is debate night, or as Music Man over on Rumble said, it's fight night. The excitement is palpable. This could very well be, depending upon the outcome, this could very well be the defining moment in this entire 2024 election. And I'm not being hyperbolic here, folks. I'm not being hyperbolic at all. If Kamala Harris can pull this off without dropping a word salad, without sounding like a complete idiot and moron, without being tied to the Biden campaign and the Biden campaign's policies, if she can come out of this unscathed, we might just have a 50-50 shot on our hands. You guys just don't know. I am so anticipating a train wreck. I can't imagine how she is going to how she's going to pull this off without falling into one of her particular word salads and that kind of stuff. I just can't see it happening. I'm almost guaranteeing at least one word salad answer out of all of this. But that being said, I've got a little bit of a show for you here in terms of things to go on with the debates. And then I was able to find two outlets to really. Amy Jean Viner over on Rumble says the betting pools have her winning the debate. I think they're going to lose their money. But anyway, as I was saying, I found two outlets that will allow us to watch unencumbered and unhindered. The first one, of course, will be Newsmax, and I will do that one. I will use that one to its fullest if I can. However, that being said, I also have NBC as well, which is queued up here in the studio. So if I lose one, I can go to the other. But anyway, that's what's on tap for tonight, and you guys can stay and watch the entire freaking thing right here. As long as I can keep it streaming and everything else, I will be right here with you, and I will jump in when the commercial breaks come up. So you'll get to see my smiling face, my face for radio, my face for radio on the breaks. And the reason being is because, of course, I don't necessarily need you guys to be listening to the advertisements or whatever. Newsmax also has their own, politicos, people doing their analyses, and we may listen into some of that, but, again, it's going to be touch and go, kind of just playing it by ear as we go through this whole thing. All right. So first things first, tonight I have our very own, Rumble's very own wise man, who goes by the name of Buddy Weiser. He is on tap for tonight's pledge. So if you are of mine, please stand. Remove your hat if you're wearing one. Otherwise, place your hand over your heart and recite with Buddy the Pledge of Allegiance.
I hereby pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which she stands, one nation under one God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all her citizens. So help me God.
And of course, I thank you, Buddy Weiser, for that submission. If you would like to hear your version of the Pledge of Allegiance right here on the program, make sure you record yourself doing it in your style, and then send it on to me. Email it to me, fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. All right, let's go with tonight's promotion or tonight's sponsor, I guess is the best way to put it. Which, by the way, I've noticed a couple of you have purchased one of the products that I'm about to talk about, and I do appreciate the support. I do appreciate it. Right here, the Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Take a look at this thing. 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. Look on the inside. They didn't do just cheap glue here, folks. They stitched it all the way through the leather and the pages contained within. It has a 100-year warranty against materials and workmanship defects. Therefore, you can send it back to them and they will either fix it or replace it for free in that time frame. It has 6A rounded corners that won't poke you in the bottom or in the chest, according to my Whiskey Warriors. This is Buddy tested, Buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and of course, my youngest Whiskey Warrior has checked out the internal information to ensure that you can receive your civics badge in Scouts by using this as a source document. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online to get yours today. And remember, Christmas is coming up. These make great stocking stuffers for all of those who are on your list, whether they are conservative or leftist. You can get all of them. Anyway. Okay, so, by the way, go and check them out today. And, don't forget to check out the rest of the information on the Institute on the Constitution as well. I do appreciate them for allowing me to be a affiliate. All right, well, I was approached by someone on X. I know this happens quite a bit because of the course that I take on X. But here's the thing. This person, whoever this person was, God love her, because I swear she just is incredibly out there. And here, let me just explain to you about what happened here. So here's the original post on X, and it's a meme that was posted. And it says on that meme, if women took up arms to defend their reproductive rights, the GOP would ban assault rifles yesterday. And according to this, it is a quote by Steve Marmel, whoever the hell that is. I have no idea. Well, I responded to the meme, which was posted by somebody other than this other person. And I responded to the meme and I said, right here, considering that there is not one single reproductive quote unquote right lost, since women still can choose to have sex when, where, and with whom they wish, along with using protection to prevent pregnancy if they wish, I don't think your premise is applicable. And then, of course, I followed it up with my typical hashtag, only morons vote Democrat. Well, this interesting individual jumped in immediately behind me and said, the right to access doctors, medication, medical procedures, and surgery is not just for men. And so I responded back and said, women haven't lost that either. Only morons vote Democrat. She came back and she says, in places like Idaho and Texas, doctors aren't allowed to practice women's medicine. Okay. Keep that in mind. Women are taking emergency air transport, aka paramedic helicopters, out of the state into the safety of other modern hospitals, and with doctors not threatened by religious extremists. I simply replied back and said, false. Doctors can perform all kinds of women's medicine. You're smoking if you think they can't. Only morons vote Democrat. She comes back with SB 8 in Texas prevents doctors from providing medication to women. So women have to flee Texas for proper medical care. Okay. I responded with, so women can't be treated at all? Question mark. And then I said, quit being hyperbolic. That isn't happening. Only morons vote Democrat. She comes back with, yes, border clinics are overcrowding with refugees from states that prevent doctors from practicing medicine. This is why so many of our women doctors are treating out-of-state patients. Okay. I checked with my buddy in Texas just to see. I know it's false. But I checked with him just to see. Now, he lives in the center part of Texas. So I simply asked him, hey, I understand that, your wife and daughters can no longer get health care in Texas. You must be going broke sending them out of state in order to get standard health care. Yeah. He responded with, that's fake news. This is what we're dealing with, people. These people literally are as stupid and moronic as all of that. Now, look, I understand SB 8 is the abortion bill. I get it. Okay. And honestly, it's just, look, I get it. I understand, but that isn't all women's stuff. That isn't everything that encompasses women's health care. It's one small slice of a whole large portion, which of course the hyperbolic and out of proportion and blown up fear factor here is like, oh my God, Texas and Idaho, they're banning medicine for women, period. Yeah, right. But this is the level of incompetent thinking that we're dealing with. This is the level of incompetence that we are dealing with that is coming into this election. These people are nuts. They are morons, and only morons vote Democrat. All right. So, heading into tonight's debate, this story came out, and I was kind of fascinated by it because, of course, I am a technological person in my normal life. Sorry, I had to take a drink. I am a technological person in my normal life. And apparently Kamala Harris, while she's trying to distance herself from Joe Biden, she's not doing a very good job because even her web designers, her web designers for her newly launched policy page and issues page have been, shall we say, less than honest about where they're getting her stuff. So here, in Woke Spy, Kamala Harris's new policy page was quite literally copied and pasted from Joe Biden's campaign. Now, you're kind of like, all right, well, how in the hell does that happen and how do you know? Well, for those of you that don't quite understand, there is, for every web page, even though its graphics look great, like this one that's up on the screen behind me, even though there's graphical representations and there's text and things like that, there is underlying what's called hypertext markup language code, HTML code. That code has an incredible amount of information that can be essentially mined and seen by people who are tech savvy. It's called viewing the source code. And when you view the source code, you can see a lot of things that you normally aren't able to see, like the code, the commands, things like that. Whenever you, like, for an example, if you roll over something, changing the icon because it's a link rather than just a string of text or something along those lines. Well, what happened here is that somebody got curious and Kamala Harris created this issues page on her campaign website, and they discovered that what's called the metadata, which is a block of code at the very top that helps search engines and things like that not only find your page, but also categorize it because of the information that is found as a part of that metadata. Well, they found that the metadata, inside the metadata, was not even changed. And here you go, right here. This was posted by Corrine Green on X, but here it is. A new way forward, Kamala Harris for president official campaign. But underneath that, it says, together we can finish the job for the American people. Are you with us? Join our campaign to re-elect Joe Biden today. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, this does come up in a search engine. Here, I'll even do it for you live. Watch this. So this is Brave, right? I type in Kamala Harris issues page. I've already searched for it once, so it popped right up. But here, take a look. So I do this issues page. Oh, what is this? Right here. Right here. Right there. Let me get closer on it. Right there. 2 days ago, according to the archives. Because that's what they do, is they cache the pages, or they archive the pages. So here it is, right here. Together we can finish the job for the American people. Are you with us? Join our campaign to re-elect Joe Biden today. So, oh, they can't even come up with their own shit. Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry, but it just... And apparently it also shows up on Google that way, too. Now, I was using Brave right there, but it also shows up on Google that way as well. So, yeah. They have to borrow. I thought she was trying to get away from Joe. I thought she was trying to say, I am not like Joe. I am the change that you want. I am the joy. Yeah, no, not really. You're just Joe repackaged in a different gender and a different package color. That's it. All right, so let's get into the debates as far as that goes. And to be honest with you, that's basically going to be the point of the debates. Debate obviously, number one is for Trump to make sure that she stays tied to the Biden campaign's promises, the Biden campaign's actions over the last 3 years. And also, her side, she needs to try and distance herself from that at the same time, she's demonstrating that I am not the same as what my boss was, and that I am the better choice moving forward. I am the new way forward. I am the joy. I am the untapped, untainted professional who's going to be able to fix all of this stuff that, of course, I was involved in, but all of this stuff, I'm going to fix it for you. Well, this new poll came out. This is a Marist poll, M-A-R-I-S-T poll. And this Marist poll had a question in regards to whether or not this debate is going to be of importance in terms of deciding who is who. Now, keep in mind, many people have already got their minds made up, just like me. I am 100% a Trump voter. I'm not going to change. There's nothing now that would change me from what I am planning on doing in November. Okay. But apparently 30% of the respondents who are registered voters say that the debate will help them a great deal or a good amount in making the selection for president. Now, that being said, that isn't quite a third yet. It isn't quite a third. But let's say it's pretty close to a third. That's the numbers of people. Those are the independents. Okay. Those are the independent voters that both of these candidates are attempting to go after, because close to 69%, almost 70%, think that the debate isn't necessarily going to help them at all. So there's a 30%, almost 1/3 of the voters that are out there, according to this poll, will likely view this debate as, and again, keep in mind, this is likely going to be the only presidential debate. We have the vice president one coming up on October 1st. But, I mean, realistically, I don't think anybody's really going to watch the VP debates, because honestly, it's who is at the top of the ticket that is going to make the difference in all the elections. Hardly anybody knows what Kamala Harris has done, other than the fact that, I mean, really, she hasn't done much of anything, and the stuff that she's done has been a total train wreck. But more often than not, people are not aware of who she actually is. They just don't care. That's just like with Mike Pence. Mike Pence was going to be in the race, which he was. Not very many people really understood who Mike Pence was, outside, of course, from the January 6th scenario. But all of that being said, tonight is not about those diehard voters in either camp. Tonight is about those 30% of independents that are sitting in the middle. That are the ones that need to be convinced tonight. Okay, now, while I've made the comment, and I did last night, and I'll do it again tonight, the onus, honestly, is on Kamala Harris. And let's be honest, pretty much Trump is a known quality, okay, and a known quantity. We know who he is. We've seen him in office already for 4 years. We've seen the train wreck that came after the Trump presidency for the last 3.5 years plus. And so tonight, the onus is on Kamala to demonstrate not only that she is not the same as her boss, because let's face it, everybody does not like Joe Biden's policies and actions. That's why it's one of the reasons why he got kicked out. But the onus is on Kamala. Well, we already see the liberal media, at least according to the Daily Fetched here, we already see the liberal media is beginning to lower the expectations for Kamala's debate performance. Kind of like what they did with Trump. Anyway, so what it says here in the piece, with just hours to go before the highly anticipated debate between Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, the establishment media have already begun lowering their expectations of the vice president's performance. Harris' campaign is preparing how to respond to Trump should he insult her or make any derogatory statements or comments on stage, according to MSNBC. The network reported part of the plan for the vice president to remain calm in those situations, to appear presidential in those situations, but also be prepared to stand her ground, to call out any lies she may hear on the debate stage, and to take Donald Trump to task on things that did or didn't happen during his time in the White House. Harris is also reportedly planning to raise the issue of Project 2025, which, of course, Trump has repeatedly disavowed. Okay? It appears as if the media is on board with Kamala's tactic of not allowing Trump to get under her skin and is preparing to praise her performance as presidential if she stands there and does not raise her voice. Now, here's the thing. Okay? Here's the thing as far as that goes. All right. I was listening to the pre-debate conversations and interviews on NBC as I was making sure that I wasn't going to get interrupted. But here, the thing about it is that the NBC host was interviewing a campaign advisor for Kamala Harris. And that campaign advisor stated once again that Donald Trump called our military people soldiers, suckers, and losers. They repeated the hoax. Now, NBC isn't even going to be a part of the debate. It's ABC's debate. But here's the thing. If you honestly believe that if NBC gets away with that the journalist or the interviewer, she didn't even bother to correct him. She just sort of let him talk and then kept on going. Rather than saying, okay, come on now, that isn't true. That was totally debunked. Even Snopes has debunked it. So on and so forth. Well, guess what? The ABC folks are going to allow Kamala Harris to say whatever the hell she wants, and I will bet you they will argue 100% with Trump on anything that he might say, whether it's true and maybe phrased incorrectly, or possibly even just an exaggeration, as I've told you before that Trump does tend to do. They are going to be on him like nobody's business. Okay? And so that is essentially what you're going to be looking at for the focus for tonight. Because I can almost guarantee you that David Muir, I'm almost assuredly, he will jump in and defend. Now, according to this piece in Town Hall, the debate prep points to an all-out panic. Now, I'm not quite sure what they necessarily mean by that, but basically what they are saying is that if Kamala Harris is not able to be successful here, okay, that she hasn't had time to actually articulate her position, that she hasn't had the moment of time, to be able to deal with Donald Trump and the way that he acts, that they could be a bit of a problem. Now, apparently, according to CNN in this town hall piece, CNN is reporting that Kamala has watched all of Donald Trump's debates, studied his insults, and even has talked to no one alone but Hillary Clinton for advice. Now, I don't know why. And even this person here in this says they don't know why. But yeah, that's that's something that's going to happen. Anyway, this is definitely going to be interesting. So here we go. That's what's going to happen. So assuming, of course, that he's not going to be overly aggressive, which, by the way, he's signaled that he's not going to be overly combative or aggressive. He is basically going to do, like I told you last night that he should do, is just allow things to progress like he did up against Joe. So that's what he should do. He needs to go after her on the issues, make sure that he can tie her to Joe Biden and his policies, which they are. Anyone with a brain can look at her policies and her policy page, which is a basic wish list of goals and not really any specific policies, but basically to go and just allow her to get in her way and in her own way and trip over her own words. That may be exactly what we need to get, or what we're going to get tonight. So, yeah. So yeah, we're just going to have to see. I personally think that if Kamala Harris stays true to form, and don't get me wrong, there could be a complete change on this entire thing. Okay. But if Kamala Harris remains true to form, she's going to get into her word salads and get totally off track. Yeah. So there you go. And of course, for Trump's side, this in the Washington Examiner, Trump is expected to use Harris's own record against her at the debate, which he absolutely should. Now, I guess he was on there was a phone call with reporters. The Trump campaign basically said the former president's desire to go after Harris for being part of President Joe Biden's administration, for example, for being the, quote, last person in the room before the deadly 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal. The campaign also foreshadowed some criticism of her while she was San Francisco's district attorney and California's attorney general, as well as the policy positions that she adopted in her 2020 bid, which she and her 2024 aides have rescinded. So the Trump campaign spokesman Jason Miller said Harris can't defend her own record, let alone defending the records of anybody else. What has Kamala Harris stood for over the years, going all the way back to the beginning, with the point being, these are dangerously liberal policy positions. So yeah, so there we go. He's got to avoid the name calling. I'm telling you, he needs to avoid the incompetent name calling, the crazy, the stone cold loser, the totally inept. He needs to forget all about that. He needs to drop the idea of Comrade Kamala Harris. And I honestly think that the format will kind of help him in that, because he can focus on addressing the moderators rather than turning, because they're supposedly, and of course we all know rules are made to be broken, but they're supposedly set up in a way that ABC has already said you will not address each other directly. And I think that will actually play out in Trump's favor in terms of all of this. So Tulsi Gabbard was also helping Trump prepare for the Tuesday debate. And Tulsi made a comment that told the Washington Examiner earlier this month that that was really what I exposed in that debate in 2019 when we were both candidates running for president, was her hypocrisy and how she would say one thing and do another. She is a fake person who cannot be trusted and who cares only about herself and her political ambition, not about the American people. And that is exactly what Bernie Sanders said in that clip that I was talking about last night, where Bernie Sanders was basically saying, yeah, she hasn't changed any of her values. She's just telling people what they want to hear. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much the gist of what he was saying. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the debate is going to, at least at a very minimum, be entertaining. Now there is a possibility that you could come out of this, by the way, in terms of an even 50-50 split, in which case, that will open up a large fight. It's going to be basically a fight to the end if they can both manage to achieve their goals tonight. We'll just have to kind of see, because we know ABC News is going to give her softball questions. We know ABC News is going to go after Donald Trump on anything that he might say that is even questionable. We'll just kind of have to see what happens. Now, one of the main things, of course, is that this is occurring in Pennsylvania. I think it's the Pennsylvania Convention Center. I'm sorry, not at the Pennsylvania. It's in Philadelphia. Yeah, it's happening in Pennsylvania. So the question is really going to be, are they going to bring up her flip-flopping on fracking? Because Pennsylvania is a huge fracking state. So we'll just have to see if that comes up. We'll also have to see how she handles the whole idea of clean energy versus petroleum energy. We'll see if that topic comes up, kind of on the same line as fracking. So yeah. So the biggest challenge here, of course, is making sure that Harris can define who Harris is without being vague and off topic. And then, of course, again, Trump has the advantage because he is the known quantity, but he needs to tie her to her record in the Biden administration in some way, shape, or form without insulting her, of course. So, yeah. So those are kind of the key things that we need to make sure, or that both candidates would need to make sure to identify for tonight. So, and again, keeping in mind that Donald Trump has to be calm, cool, and collected. And realistically, both of them actually kind of need to do that. Harris needs to do it because nobody thinks that she can actually handle the pressure. And Trump has to do it because he can't let his anger take over, because that's when he starts making mistakes and saying things that can be taken completely out of context and so on and so forth. So we're going to have to see what happens here. All right, we're about 20 minutes away. I did put up a poll on X with regards to this, whether or not people thought who was going to win the debate. Now, keep in mind, I only picked up 16 votes. I don't know why people aren't voting in it, but whatever. And I basically looked at, I pretty much asked the question, tonight's the debate, who do you think will win? We had Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. I did give him an option of it being a tie, and then I also gave the option of don't care. Well, Donald Trump is leading right now, 87.3% to 0 for Kamala Harris. 0 think that it's going to be a tie, and 12.5%, 12.5% don't care. So there were a couple votes on don't care, and the rest are all Donald Trump. We'll see if that holds true. We'll see if that comes out. We all know that the mods are going to be on Harris's side. So we all know that. But yeah, we'll just have to kind of see what happens with it. So Keep in mind, too, though, that this debate is probably going to be the only debate. Because let's be honest, if Trump runs away with it, then he has no reason to give her another chance. If she runs away with it, she has no need to give him another chance. And if they tie, or are deemed a tie in both camps' eyes, well, there may not even be a reason to do it. So this is likely going to be the one and only chance that we're going to be able to see both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on the exact same stage. So yeah. So we'll see. Sorry. I had to take a drink. I was talking for quite some time. It's going to be interesting. So, well, here. So here's Newsmax. They are starting their pre-debate show. They're showing, in this particular case, what you can see is where all the press pool is, which is a couple buildings away from the actual debate. And of course, they've got a roving reporter. He's walking around, talking to some of these people and getting some pre-debate information, of course. So, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Here in about 18 minutes, we'll get started. So I want to ask a question of all of you. What are your thoughts? And go ahead and just add them into the chats, the various chats. What are your thoughts in terms of either what I've said or what you think is going to happen? Just kind of give me an indication in there, in the chats, as to what you think is going to occur tonight. Whether or not tonight is going to be a defining moment. Do you think it's going to be a defining moment, or do you think it's going to be more of the same? Or do you think we're actually going to get something that is new and exciting that might invigorate one or the other of the campaigns? Because let's be honest, again, as I said, Trump is kind of a known quantity. Buddy on Rumble says it's called the Constitution Center Arena. Yeah, I might have messed that up. Anyway. Oops, excuse me. So yeah. So what do you guys think? Do you think it's going to be, I don't know. Do you think it's going to be a benefit? Do you think it's not? Do you think those 30% of voters that are thinking that it's going to get somewhere? Anyway. Amy over on Rumble, not sure it will be a defining moment for the Dems. Probably no matter what she does, they will think she did great. Well, that's a given. That's a given. 3 Chevy says, I think anything less than total victory by Trump may be looked at as a loss. It will, if it isn't total victory, I would tend to agree that the Harris campaign will definitely try to demonstrate it as a loss. However, I'm not entirely sure. It sort of depends on how it comes down, but I understand your point. Music Man, of course, over on Rumble says, Harris will destroy herself. I certainly hope that's going to be the outcome. I mean, I'm kind of hoping for a train wreck myself, but that's just me. Amy chimes back in and says, unless she really falls on her face, if Trump is his usual, he will be called a bully, which is exactly why he needs to stay away from that kind of stuff. He has to sit and be calm. You know, honestly, I feel like if he can do pretty much the same thing that he did in the Biden 2024 debate not too long ago, that essentially ended Joe Biden's political career. I think that that is actually going to be the kind of Trump that I would expect to see. and to make sure that they hit on, you know, nothing but policies, 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 Amy says. Policies, policies, policies. With a few typos. So. And 3 Chevy, of course, says this, got to remember she was a prosecutor, so she may not completely implode. Yeah, you're true. That's true. She may not, but history has also shown us that whenever she's gotten in front of a camera without having a script in front of her, she tends to spew word salads. So, Tommy over on Facebook says, when she says something really stupid, and she will, if he just raises an eyebrow and stares at her, that would be awesome. Oh, yeah, that actually is true. Or even if he does a gesture, just something like, you know, throwing his hand out, like, there you go. Right like that. I could see where that would be, yeah. Or he could do, the key too is that he could also do something like what he did to Joe, where, you know, she does the response, it is just a total word salad, and he comes back for the rebuttal, which basically is, well, I have no idea what she just said right there, but, and then continues on. Which that could definitely be something, as long as he could just do it calmly without like insulting her or anything else. All he has to do is just basically say, yeah, I have no idea what she just said. And I think that will be enough. I think, I'm not thinking that, there's going to be a great comedic moment like what you see in, say, the Walter Mondale, Ronald Reagan age debate, although that would be extremely awesome to come out with some sort of it. Or even better yet, the Trump to Clinton, you'd be in jail comment. I think that one's not going to come either. I don't think there's going to be a position or a time where that can be the case. But he may be able to get in a good zing. All right. So we're about 12 minutes out from the start of the process here. And let me ask you this. Would you guys prefer to see me on camera in the corner like I am right now during the debate? Or do you want me to just turn off my camera and you guys just focus on the debate? Let me know in the chat what you want me to do. I'm going to leave it up to you guys to decide which way you want to do it. Which way do you think you want? Me on camera in front like I am right now, or just like blank out so you guys can just focus on the debate? What do you think? Come on, I'm looking for some suggestions here. What do you think? Okay, I got one stay on camera from Mark over on Facebook. What else? Anything? Nothing from Rumble. I'm shocked. Rumble should be like lighting up. I've got plenty of people over on Rumble. What do we got here? Oh, oh, YouTube is attacking me. Oh, okay. Ms. T of Tex is saying stay here. Coco. Of course we need it. Yeah, of course we need my handsome face in the corner. All right. Well, okay. 3 Chevy says you're good. Okay, so it looks like it's all right. So I can just stay right here. You guys will see my expressions as she does. Anyway. Oh, I guess Mark K is also streaming as well. And he's basically showing interviews that he did before the debate. I guess people are so stupid. At least that's what. Oh, that's what Bam is saying. Anyway, Yeah, I think I think the Democrats are definitely, I think definitely a bit of a problem for sure. So anyway. Oh, oh, now I'm being told that I'm the boss. I got to keep my hide right here. All right. So it looks like I'm right here. Okay. 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 What are you getting sick at? Um Anyway. All right. Well, we're about 9 minutes out. Now, I want to try and I'm going to try and keep track of the number of lies that are stated. But it might be a bit difficult because I'm sure they're not going to be like outright lies like what we saw during the Biden debate, but we'll give it a shot and we'll see. So, yeah. So there we go. Okay. So what else do we have here? Yeah, apparently I've been hit with a community warning on one of my long time ago videos on YouTube. So we'll see. So anyway, yeah. So well, Pakarik over on Rumble. Yeah, I'm going to be doing Newsmax too, so it would be no different than it is. So yeah, we're about 9 minutes out, 10 minutes out, 9 minutes out. As you can see, they're doing commercials here, so we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, it's going to be coming up. Oh yeah, let's do our elliptical. Whisper quiet elliptical. Anyway, I don't know why I'm laughing. That's not a bad idea. So there you go. All right. Okay, we'll wait. As soon as I get it up, as soon as it comes up, I will go ahead and pop in for it. But again, I think the major pieces of this puzzle are essentially making sure that they are essentially, questions with regard to policy. I don't know if it's going to be anything with, ABC obviously is going to give her the benefit of the doubt on a lot of stuff. As far as the notes are concerned, again, they have a pen and a paper. So, what I used to do or have done in the past when I'm only given a pen and a paper for something like a test or something along those lines, what I have done in the past is just gone in and like written down everything that I can remember. So that way I don't have to worry about that. And that may be a strategy that she might take, is just writing down some quick notes on the stuff. We'll have to see if she actually picks up the pen and the pad and does that. To me, it would seem like a prudent thing to do with that entire situation, to make absolutely certain that you can remember some of the individual points that you might be trying to make, or, something that you might say, hey, you know what? I really need to remember this, that kind of stuff. So there we go. And yeah, that too. 3 Chevy points out, where'd my cursor go? There it is. 3 Chevy points out, I think she has a lot of prepared statements. Trump needs to ask her unexpected questions. Yes. Yes. And Amy is saying, is anyone checking the pad for, whether or not it's already been filled out? Well, we'll see. I don't think they will. Honestly, don't think they will. But we'll just have to see. We'll have to take a look and see. Maybe we might be able to see it. I don't know. We may not. Who knows? But anyway. All right, well, let's just going to hold here. Again, like I said, I think the biggest thing, of course, is to make sure that Trump is calm, cool, and collected, that, tries to catch Kamala Harris. Tommy points out, I didn't think they can communicate with each other at all. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to interact just strictly with the moderators. And so, and then Tommy also, again, on Facebook says the moderators would be giving up questions and answers, could be 2 minutes. So the way that it's going to work is it's going to be 2 minutes primary answer, 2-minute rebuttal, or follow up, and then 1 minute for any additional questions. So it's roughly 5 minutes per side per question, provided that they take the entire thing. So yeah, there you go. Well, that's cool. I'm full screen. 3 Chevy got you full screen on iPad and then doing chat on my phone. All right, that's cool. Okay, well, they got shoot, I can't think of his first name, but something J. Harris, Michael J. Harris, I think, or something like that. But anyway, let's go ahead and break in, and we'll get some of the precursor stuff for this.
His policies
David
are.
J. Harris.
She has no answer for what his policy actions, what he states he's going to attack, what he's going to do when he gets in there. He wants to secure the border. He wants to carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. He wants to end inflation, make America affordable again, make America the dominant energy producer in the world. These are things that Kamala doesn't have an answer for. She's not going to talk about outsourcing. She's not going to talk about putting tariffs on other countries. She's not going to talk about defending our Constitution. She has no answers, and she has no policies. And I even saw that most of her policies that she did put on her website were actually from Joe Biden. A lot of them were from Joe Biden's policies. So I think if he just continues to hammer home what Americans are concerned about right now, we're concerned about the border. We're concerned about the illegals that are all over this country. Look, we're for legal immigration, but come through the normal process. What we see taking place all over the country, interestingly enough, in red states and red cities, are illegals that are dumped off, that are not assimilating, that are living their own life, what they're used to, and what their cultural norm is. I had Jack Brewer on, who spends a lot of time in Haiti, and he said over there in Haiti, they do eat what we would call pets.
Right.
So I think he needs to stick to the facts. The border's an issue. Inflation's an issue. Americans are concerned about it, and Kamala has no answers.
Yeah, no answers. Hasn't been doing those media interviews other than the one quick joint one with Tim Walz. And so, Rick, I think I saw pollster Frank Luntz today, who's not usually been a fan of Donald Trump, but has recently been saying, look, he's in a lead in this race. And he said, look, if Kamala pulls the I'm speaking, Donald Trump could simply say, Rick, that's the problem. You're speaking about a lot of things. You're not really doing anything. You're not shutting down the border. Yeah. You're not lowering inflation. You're not doing these things while you're in office. You've done virtually nothing.
So true.
Right. Right. And why haven't you done it yet? If you can fix the economy, why haven't you? Why are you making Americans suffer? If you could fix the border, why didn't you? Don't blame that lame bill that they voted down earlier this year, because first of all, it was 3 years too late. And second of all, the reason we're in the position we're in is because Biden and Harris dumped all of Trump's policies that kept immigration at a manageable level, kept the illegals coming in at a manageable level. And Ed, you and I have hammered away at her lack of transparency, her lack of doing a one-on-one interview or a real news conference. And that's a big deal to us because we're journalists, but it should be a big deal to America because the mainstream media has given her this free pass. They haven't held her feet to the fire. They haven't forced her to answer the tough questions, which they do to Donald Trump every single day. And it's not fair, but it's also not okay for America that they don't really know enough about this woman that they just might vote for. And I hope that tonight, again, these moderators put the questions to her and force her to answer them. And I hope Donald Trump's paying attention, because I can't wait for him to jump all over whatever nonsense comes out of her mouth.
No, I don't think any of us can wait. I see David smile. He's excited. We're excited. David and Rick, don't go anywhere. Yeah, David, we're going to have you in the post game, and we're going to have to go to you guys first, because I'm going to want to see what you guys have to say. So stand by.
Great.
Enjoy the show here on N2.
Thanks, guys.
Always a pleasure to have you both. And Bianca, I was speaking a moment ago. They've got the slate ready to go with ABC News, the countdown before they put out this live shot from the debate stage in Philadelphia. It's just pretty intense to think about how much is riding on this one night.
Yeah, and my prediction is this is the beginning of the end for Kamala Harris. I don't think she has earned the respect or the votes of American people, and I think tonight you're going to see the campaign really have to do some cleanup after Donald Trump has a round or two with her. This is his 7th presidential debate. He is skilled, but he also has held the nation's highest office. He has been the leader of the free world. He has a record to run on, and when she goes into her record, there's only so many places to go.
Yeah, it
and
looks
not
like
good.
Yeah, absolutely. So Donald Trump trying to basically mark what it would be the greatest political comeback in American history. Somebody who just about 4 years ago, after January 6th, was considered done politically. He's come back, won the GOP nomination, and now trying to win the presidency. Let's go live to the debate.
Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election, their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special, the most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face, historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care in one's life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter, because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to, because, again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond. But I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
answer the question,
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as the rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm taking it from the city manager.
Their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But They have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York, every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're
President Trump,
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
Weaponized, please.
This
is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Don't lie.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just ask you,
David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, The former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders. And we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it, I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whiskers. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that, but he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right. Well, yeah, let's just say that wasn't very good for the big guy. To be honest with you, there were a lot of actual issues on both sides, things that were stated and said that were incorrect. One of them in particular, and I just want to bring this up because the abortion issue was a huge deal in the beginning, and obviously she planned it that way. But one of the things she did say was that there was no place that allowed babies to die. Well, what Trump was trying to talk about was Ralph Northam. And Ralph Northam made a comment with regards to the bill in terms of they were talking about third trimester abortions. And he literally said that if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what will happen. The infant will be delivered. The infant will be kept comfortable. The infant will be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. Then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. Now, the legislation that was put forth that sparked this conversation had to deal with a change where it explicitly removed the current requirement that 3 physicians agree that a woman is in need of a late-term abortion. And then also the new bill would require only the consent of the mother and the physician performing the abortion. So there was a lot of question on that. Second point that I wanted to bring up that I thing was in regards to the very fine people on both sides. That has been debunked 100%. It is even debunked by Snopes. Snopes said, and I quote, in a news conference after the rally protesting the planned removal of a Confederate statue, Trump did say there were very fine people on both sides, referring to the protesters and the counter-protesters. He said in the same statement that he was not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, who he said should be condemned totally. So they're going on and, perpetuating yet another lie. The same thing with the suckers and losers. They didn't come out and say it, but they did indicate it. Or I should say, because it's actually all of them. Because yes, Trump is in a very hostile environment. Now, buddy, I'm sorry. I know you're saying Trump is winning this debate. No, I don't believe so, because what he has done, if he cannot collect himself in this next setup, he knew he was going into hostile territory. If he cannot collect himself in this next stage or next phase, again, the whole point of her was to get him on the ropes, to get him overexcited, to get him overheated, to get him pissed off. And that is exactly what she has done. Whether or not she lies doesn't mean anything, because unfortunately her sycophantic followers are all going to jump on these and call out and not call out the lies. The problem is they got him. She has effectively put him on the defensive, and he is now not only talking to her, but he's also having to defend himself against the moderators, which is exactly where they wanted him to be. Now, I will say ABC is definitely sucking in terms of the rules, because it was clearly put out that the rules were that they weren't supposed to address each other. And she's broken the rules first. And she is consistently breaking the rules. ABC is not bothering to put her in her place and say, you need to stop addressing him and address us. So again, I'm sorry, but they suckered him into enemy territory, and he's not doing a very good job, in my opinion. I think he needs to take this break, get a breath. He does keep going off topic because, again, he's fighting with the moderators as well. Anyway, we're getting back to the into the debate now.
David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for $250 billion or more, because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank. to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I wanted to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on
to
to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need to respond.
President
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to respond
No,
to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right, and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it. Fastest prologue in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
You made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
It didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Okay, so unfortunately, the beating is continued. While President Trump may have been factual on a lot of his things, and she, of course, was not factual on a lot of her points. One of the biggest problems, of course, is that many people are not actually going to look at the facts that are presented in front. Unfortunately, they are going to just see that Donald Trump got goaded and caught right into her trap. Now, he has since calmed down a little bit, but one of the things that I definitely am faulting ABC for sure, is that the rules were very clear. They weren't supposed to be talking to one another. And she has repeatedly turned, faced him, pointed at him, and they have not said a single word. That, of course, is a bit of a problem. And that's it definitely probably one of the things that kicked him off. Now, unfortunately, Trump has a style of speaking that is relatively rambling. And, you know, he gets caught by squirrels. For an example, while he was sitting there talking about the people that worked for him and the people that worked for the Biden administration, you know, none of that, he wasted probably a good 20 seconds that he could have been clearly stating facts and evidence in front. And that, unfortunately, that is, you know, when he is speaking, that's one of the things that I have troubles with him. I mean, just being honest, that is one of the things that I don't agree with him. He may be he may have an ability to stand in front of people and speak for a very long time, but unfortunately, there are times where he gets lost in his own thoughts and in his own directions, and he has a big problem. He needs to get back on track. And unfortunately, they've allowed him to he's allowed himself to get goaded into other things. And, you know, unfortunately, I'm just going to say it. She has kept her composure and kept her cool much better than he has. And that honestly is going to be very reflective in tomorrow's, responses, because unfortunately the majority of people in this world, they focus on things like that. They focus on who is looking like the more presidential right now. Now, Trump may be the smarter individual. He is, he definitely has the more experience, but the challenge here is that when you sit there and look at the two of them and how they're responding, not only to each other, but also to the moderators, again, Trump has allowed his emotions to overtake, and that, to me, is a problem. So, again, facts, whether they're there, whether they're not, he's getting off topic. He's starting to, you know, he's used several words that he's used in the past to attack her personally for this, and this is not the debate that I think that is going to win him anything in the long run, honestly. Unfortunately, she was basically given a good bit of instruction, even though she hasn't really said anything. She's only just repeated her platitudes, but she's unfortunately got him on the ropes, off balance, etc., etc. And that's a big challenge. That is a very big challenge, when it comes to that. So, and yeah, whether she's, again, I understand keeping her cool doesn't necessarily mean anything, you know, but it does reflect quite well. For an example, if you recall, there was a, Richard Nixon debate where Richard Nixon was sweating and it didn't look good on TV. That hurt him in the debate. Okay. So he just, unfortunately, I think, at least so far, we'll see how the closing statements and closing arguments go. But I think for right now, unfortunately, there really isn't much of a decision between the two. Well, they're back now, so let's go ahead and listen back in.
Different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here.
All right, we're going to go ahead and back out of that. Unfortunately, like I said, honestly, I'm putting a non and as mostly objective opinion as I possibly can on this. She did what she needed to do, which was get Trump on the ropes, get him to respond emotionally, and she was effective in that ending debate. She did what she wanted to do, which was get his goat and put him on the ropes, and she did exactly that. Now, he got some shots in, she got shots in, but overall, unfortunately, that debate, she did exactly what she needed to do, which was make him present himself as though he was unhinged. And that, unfortunately, if you were to look at it from an objective viewpoint, again, that did not go well for him in this debate. Now, honestly, I don't think there's any way that you can that you can possibly say that she did not have the questions in advance. There's just no way. She didn't do her normal word salads where she's caught off guard by questions that she doesn't know the answer to. She didn't do her typical affects of the laughter. She smiled a couple times, but yeah. So again, the Harris camp did what they needed to do. So that's, and that was basically where this is going to come out. So honestly, I think we're going to have a very, very tight race moving forward. If he had done what he did now, granted, there were a couple times that he actually got her on her own line, which had to deal with, hey, I'm speaking now. And for that should have been a clue, honestly, to the ABC moderator team to go, okay, let's just reiterate the rules. You are not supposed to talk to one another. You talk to us. They didn't take that opportunity. And they obviously were allowing it to happen because it was benefiting Kamala completely. He did stay true to the rules. He didn't really refer to her directly. He talked about their policies. He talked about them, but he didn't refer to her directly. And so in that particular case, you can definitely say he was the positive off of that. But again, the reality, though, unfortunately, is that if you really want to look at it from a clearly, objective perspective, she got him on the ropes. She got him going, and he unfortunately allowed her to get emotionally involved. So, and honestly, it kind of started realistically from her walking across the stage and shaking his hand. I don't think that he was necessarily prepared for that kind of a scenario. And it didn't help too that the ABC moderators were in on it as well. They weren't quite as bad as what I expected, but they were bad enough to do what was necessary. So, yeah. Unfortunately, the liberal mainstream media are going to be having, there's plenty of things in there that she was able to do. So there's like Bongino says, all of this is snapshots and sound bites, and they got plenty. Yeah. So unfortunately, like I said, I think it might have been, it wasn't a disaster for either side. Let's just be honest. It wasn't a disaster. But at the same time, though, it did not go Trump's way, and it wasn't, he unfortunately fell apart, pretty early. If he'd have been able to keep his cool, at least to the first break, I think there would have been a different outcome for sure. But yeah, this is not going to be, this is in no way can anybody with any kind of relevance, relevant objective behavior could say, honestly, that this was a clear, decisive victory for him in no way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, it was a very ugly scenario, and it did not go his way. So, unfortunately, chances are there's not going to be another one, because I don't think that she is going to give him the opportunity to come back. So I really doubt, and that's part of the reason why she didn't agree to a second debate right away. And so we'll just, again, we'll just have to see, but I don't think it went very well for him. I really don't. There were a couple times that, again, I wish I had been able to talk to him in his ear and just been like, look, calm down. Here's what you need to do, so on and so forth. And unfortunately, that wasn't going to happen, but yeah, I'm a little disappointed in his reaction. So, and buddy, I appreciate your opinion. Unfortunately, not everybody is going to look at it like you do. Not everybody is going to look at the fact that Trump was outnumbered. He was, everybody knows it, who is, again, being objective, but that situation, knowing going in, if he was going in and what got blindsided by that, I would agree with you. Yeah, he had a problem, but you know that he was walking into dangerous territory, and he needed to make absolutely certain. Again, the bar was low for her, but it was high for him. All he had to do was keep his cool, stay on topic, and not get goaded into that kind of a discussion. And then, unfortunately, that's what happened. I'm just giving an objective opinion. I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about it at all. I think it was obviously it was unfair, but we knew this before he even went in. And so I'm just not, I feel bad. I wish that he would have done better, but unfortunately it's kind of water under the bridge, and we're just going to have to see what happens after moving forward, after this and moving forward. So this is one of the challenges. We knew it was going to be a challenge, and she outperformed expectations. And unfortunately, when you have a low bar and you outperform that low bar, it's going to look like you did an absolute wonderful job, even though she was wrong on several of her opinions. So I don't think that this is going to be, this is not going to favor him very well in the polls, moving forward. And again, for a fact that she was definitely coached, probably had the questions ahead of time, because there's no way that she could have been hit with some of those things had she not known it was coming. And again, I'm sorry. I can't go with Trump on this. I can't go that I'm a Trump guy, but I don't think he did a very good job here. I think he got goaded into doing exactly what they wanted him to do, which was get unhinged and emotional and start spouting off. I mean, again, he didn't necessarily address all of the issues that were being presented to him in the order of being presented, things like that. So yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. But my prediction is that either nothing much changes, or Trump's going to take a slight hit in this. That's my prediction. Hopefully she doesn't get a rise in the polls, but again, I don't think that, yeah, again, I just can't say it enough. I wish he would have done better. All right, folks. Well, thank you for joining with the watch party. I do appreciate it. Hopefully it was useful. My commentary was useful. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com. Head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account if you haven't already, and sign up for the American Perspective channel. Hit that green follow button. Otherwise, make sure you hit those thumbs ups on your way out, likes, thumbs ups, etc. And we will see you tomorrow for Whiskey Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.